Hello everyone, welcome to today's event. Now, if you're on Discord, please go ahead. You can drop a message so that you remind the others who are on the channel. Welcome, Bobby.
Hi, Amaka. Good evening. How's your day?
Good evening. My day was fine, and yours?
Very, very fine. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So I have with me Bobby on the call. Now, Bobby is let me see, where do I start from? So let me just be let me calm down a bit. So Bobby happens to be CEO of Techie's Garage. He's also a software engineer who has spent, I think, Bobby, is it 8 or 10 years in the industry? Which one are we?
Somewhere in between that.
All right, so somewhere in between that, well, between 8 to 10 years in the industry. And today we'll be talking about web development for beginners, right? So that's what we'll be discussing about today. Bobby, I think you can kick off here. If there's anything I can comment as well, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Amaka, for introducing me. And good evening to everybody present today for today's stream. Um, so basically, we want to talk about web development, and we want to talk about it from the perspective of a beginner. Basically, what the questions we'll be asking ourselves is, okay, where do I start from? How do I go about it? How am I supposed to train? What is important and what isn't? All these basic questions, and probably along the line we'll try our best to like answer some of these questions. So first of what would you call web development? As it is, it's development of the web in literal terms. Development in the sense that it has to do with the designing, the engineering, the deployment, and maintenance of web-based applications. And web-based applications in the sense of websites or actual applications that are hosted for the web. I hope I'm not being too complex by saying that. So at its basics, a website or a web application is basically any software that you develop to be accessed via the web, and it is mostly cross-platform. Means it is accessed whether via your desktop, via your phones, or whatever device that has access to the web. Now, as a beginner who wants to go into development of the web, there are usually two routes that are possible for you to take. In the earlier days, you would have to go through the means of you know standard design and engineering, which means you would have to go through the routes of design and then coding, which has to do with you learning an actual programming language and mastering the use of that programming language in order to implement your designs. But there's a second option because tech is constantly evolving, and better options are, or easier and faster options are coming up every day. And that is the second option is the low code or no code approach towards building the web. So in order to build up on this idea, we already have like the core and standard way of learning to use codes to build up the web after your design, obviously. And that is always going to be a core part of everything, having the basic idea. So let's explore that a little. There are a couple of things that are important when you want to go via the route of standard engineering and development during development of the web. And first off, you would have to learn the basics. Now, the web is made up of a foundational language called HTML, and HTML is usually backed by CSS, which is a cascading style sheet. HTML being the hypertext markup. So the whole idea of a hypertext markup, the web was first off created for the so that documents can easily be accessed. Sharing of information could be accessed from different parts of the world. So the approach that was inherent. The approach that was basic or instinctful to them at that time was making a foundational language whereby you could easily manipulate documents in such a way that it could lay the basic emphasis you need and pass the message you need the way it ought to go. So their instinct was to come up with a language or a markup language that they could use in manipulating documents, which is where hypertext markup came up. And what that does is basically it gives you the ability to be able to manage the layout of a document, and make your emphasis and your basic configurations to the appearance of a document on the web. Then over time, they evolved into bringing up a style sheet in order to, make designing much more robust and easier. So these two languages are the basic things you would always need to learn once you want to do anything that pertains to the web. I mean, whether you choose to end up doing a low code, no code approach, or you want to go through the engineering, having a little bit of this knowledge would help you go a long way. So it is always important in your journey that you pick this as your first stop, learning the HTML and CSS. So you have to start with this. It's a fundamental building block for the web development, and is used for structuring content, while CSS is used for styling. So you can learn the basics through online tutorials and courses, many of which are free. So because HTML is such a foundational knowledge and is at its basic, is the bare minimum you have to learn when you want to go into web development. It is usually free to access most of the information. You could go on YouTube. A lot of learning platforms usually make this available, or you could choose to use platforms such as Better Copper and Techie's Garage, who their professionals make the curriculum a lot easier for you to comprehend, and they help you with workshops and guided instructions that will make you learn it faster and get a lot more proficient faster. So learning the basics is the first key. Afterwards, using the engineering approach, there's a step further you take. You have to learn a stack. Now, the web is made up of two ends of operations. Let me put it that way. There's the front end and then there's a back end. Now, front end has to do with everything that a user who is trying to access the web would experience and interact with, while the back end is more of the end that the user doesn't have a direct interaction with, but helps in providing all the necessary things or tools that the front end would use to make the interaction possible. So your front end has to do with, yes, the HTML and CSS you see, and an extra programming tool or language called JavaScript. You know, JavaScript, excuse me, and a couple of other scripts that have similarities to it, enable you make the document a lot more programmable and interactable. So initially, when HTML and CSS was developed, it was developed for static content. So you don't really have that luxury of interacting with it in terms of animations, clicking of buttons, and getting response or reactions in response to whatever buttons you click, or maybe effects and certain things. So all this was supposed to be programmatically implemented. Sorry for my use of grammar. It was supposed to be programmatically implemented, and HTML and CSS didn't really have the ability to make that possible at the instance when it was first introduced. So JavaScript came to make that possible. So it brought the full and core programming approaches of other languages like C, Java, and the rest of them. It brought it to the web. And so when you want to begin your actual proper engineering journey, you need to start learning languages like JavaScript, in order to start bringing about interaction and dynamism to your web development. Now, when you want to learn this, you need to learn them as a stack. A stack is basically the list of framework and languages you use in order to, build up whatever web application or web platform that you're working on. So learning a specific stack is usually very helpful. And it's good because there are a lot of stacks out there. There's a mem stack, and so on and so forth. So using a specific stack is very important, and you need to learn to choose your stack because a lot of them have different learning curves. And with different learning curves, that would mean some of them might be a lot more difficult for you to learn. So the ability for you to, spot out a stack that has a easier learning curve for you is usually very important. So first off, it starts by you learning the basic JavaScript for your basic dynamic implementations on the site. Then you go on to learn a framework, probably like Vue and React or Angular or whatsoever front end framework that you want to. That is for the front end, and then you could go on to learn a stack for your back end. Back in the days, it used to be PHP. There are people who still use Java for their back end. Some people use Python and Django and its kind, while some people are still focused on JavaScript. But in my advice, they not to say that anyone is okay, anyone is preferred, but the fact that using a specific language across all stacks makes it easier for you to learn would come into play as a beginner. So that meaning in your front end, if you use a framework built around JavaScript, it will be easier for you to learn a back-end framework that also works with JavaScript. So combining those, you could use a front end based, a JavaScript based front end, and a JavaScript based back end, and it makes it easier for you to learn. Uh, Learning this also, you could find tutorials online. You could also get to platforms such as Better Copper or all those others out there and pay for courses that will teach you how to use this appropriately. Amaka, am I still audible? I hope I'm not just talking to myself.
You are very audible.
All right. I hope I'm not going too fast.
No, you're not going too fast.
All right. Thank you. So
All right.
just to run through it again, after you learn your basics, the next step is to go into a specific stack. When you go into a stack, it means going into a stack basically means picking a set of tools that are using working in your front end. It means a language or a framework that are using your front end, and that's that using your back end. Your front end is everything that the users would interact with, while your back end is what has to do with storage of information and retrieval of information, things that the user doesn't have direct access to. And there are various frameworks that are separate that are used in building these two parts of a website or a web application generally. So, and a person who is able to do both a front end and a back end engineering is called a full stack engineer. So when you are going through your journey of becoming a web developer, it is your duty to know whether you want to become just a front end engineer, just a back end engineer, or you want to become full stack. I mean, it's all part of the journey, but it's advised that while you are going through the journey, pick one and become good at it before you improve on it. So if you are learning it while you are learning it, you choose that you want to start by becoming a front-end engineer. Focus on that for the time being. Get convertant or get very familiar with a specific framework and stick with it for a period of time till you are very good at it. And before you choose to, get into the back end and in essence become a full stack engineer. That way it is easier for you to become a master at it. So go online, there are tutorials, there are classes on whatsoever kind of framework that you choose to use, whether it's JavaScript based or it is Ruby based, Java based, or Python based, or even PHP based. There are a lot of tutorials that are both free and paid that you could go for, and it's going to be of help to you as you go. Now, in order to get good at this, the next very important thing you need to do is regular practice. You need to keep practicing. And in the world of technology, not just programming, technology as a whole, it's no news that it keeps evolving. And that will mean new things would keep coming out, uh, no matter how conversant you are with the old ones, a new thing would always come out. So, in order for you to stay updated, consistent learning is very important. What you learn, what you must have learned in January this year, by September, which is the month we are in, either some things, updates have come into it that makes it a lot more robust than it used to be, or an entirely new thing must have come out by now. I'm sure that we all use application and we realize that every time our applications requires you to update them and update them and update them. This is because all these tools, all these programming languages are under constant review, and updates are always being made to them. So it is your duty as an engineer to get conversant with them and keep learning in order for you to get better. Either you are learning new tools or you are getting deeper knowledge or deeper insights on the tools that you are already using. Yeah, so constant learning, constant practice, constant research is going to make you a better engineer. So you could also help yourself by collaborating. Join communities, cohort programs, go on GitHub, look for repos that you can contribute to, network with people who are also at your level. Join communities such as it could be Techies Garage open source community, it could be Top Universe, it could be I believe Beta Copper has a community under it too. And by doing that, you would meet other people who are like you, who are learning. You guys can share ideas. They could you could share ideas, and you could share projects together. You could work on projects together, and that in essence is going to help you build both your confidence and your skills, and that helps a lot. And I cannot overemphasize the importance of soft skills in the world of tech. Soft skills being your ability to be able to communicate, be able to present, be able to speak, basically be able to ask questions. uh, it is very, very important in the world of technology, because over time, after you've mastered any of these stacks, whether as a front-end engineer, back-end engineer, or as a full stack, you might you would end up getting a remote job. And as a remote job engineer, one of the most important things you have to use in delivering your daily duties is effective communication. If you are not able to communicate well, a lot of your work uh, is going to be surrounded by frustration. Let me put it at that. uh, you need to learn how to communicate, even as you're learning how to become a better engineer. And it is during your practice and your collaboration stage of your learning that you get to build up these skills. uh, to further build on your knowledge, always go on and take on online courses, online tutorials, check for updates. You could follow some YouTube channels that have like regular release of informations and updated informations. Even if they give just the overview, it's a good pointer for you to go and do your research and learn on all those things. So follow up channels on YouTube, on your social channels on Twitter. Follow core, the Python community, follow the JavaScript community on LinkedIn and all those places. And when new information comes out, you'll be able to get them. You'll be able to follow up with the tutorials, and you'll be able to learn. Then while you're at it, it is very important to build a portfolio. Now, building a portfolio does not mean you must have done jobs for professionally for 10 or 20 clients. No, that's not what it means. Building a portfolio is basically, while you are learning, these tiny projects that you work on, the little projects that you work on, always keep the habit of properly storing them. Learn to use platforms like GitHub to ensure that your code base is always kept intact, so that you can always retrieve them, because these portfolios, these things are the things that you would use when you are putting in for interview. When your interviewer asks you, like, what have you been doing, what have you been able to do in your 6 months of being an engineer, in your 1 year of being an engineer, in your 2 years of being an engineer, what have you been able to do? It's this minor projects that you might think are minor that you would use as your display. Also, when you join these communities and you collaborate with people, you are building a portfolio around it. So always ensure that you have like a track record of all the things that you are doing while you are learning. It's going to help a lot. So build your portfolio too while you're learning. Stay updated. That can't be overemphasized. You need to keep up with updates. Yeah, we've talked about networking and collaborations. Having peers that you work with. Then you can always try and apply for jobs, apply for junior roles, apply for internships. When you apply for junior roles, you apply for internships, it gives you the ability to be exposed to the professional world, even if it's for a brief for a little while, and that in itself is something that you could add uh, to your portfolio. So these are the steps that you take when you want to become an engineer via implementation using codes. But yes, there's the option of you working with no code or low codes, which we'll look into briefly. But as an engineer, whether you're a front end, back end, or full stack, you should never stop learning. There is no point that you would get to in your journey as an engineer or as a designer in the web that you become a professional that doesn't need to learn. You always need to keep learning. Even Linus Torvald, who was the one who built the Linux operating system many years back, if he stops doing anything related to the computing world and he comes down to 2023 and wants to get back to it, he won't be able to do anything except he goes back to learn and update himself on all the recent changes that have come to be. That's just the reality of things. Now, making a journey into the world of web development using no code or low code, it's kind of similar but not exactly the same. uh, it's always important for you to start from the basics, have the basic knowledge, HTML, CSS, ensure you understand the foundational operations of how the web works, how your browser puts out for the request, how it gets it back, how these documents are hosted, and all those things are basic knowledge that you would always need to get. uh, it's part of the information you need to get, even if it is in a no code environment. Now, the next thing you would need to do is explore some platforms where you do some no code or low code platforms. Now, there are a couple of them. A very popular one is WordPress. There's Joomla. There's Wix. Uh, I think there's Mobile Robo. A lot of them are out there. There's Framer. uh, plenty of them are out there. Explore them, find the one that you are most comfortable with, and start learning to use them. Then learn how to use these website builders. Now, website builders, they offer drag and drop interfaces, which is stuff like I've just mentioned. We this few stuff, they offer builder the ability for you to just drag and drop, uh, you know, how do they call it now? It's a no code or low code environment where you use drag and drop tools in order to build the interface of your website. So you need to learn how to use that too. Just get conversant with one of them. There are a lot of them out there for you to use. You just need to do a little bit of research. So you could also use a content management system, which is also like WordPress. You could use them to build your blogs and its likes. Basically, they have plugins that allow you implement anything that you would want to implement using regular engineering, even though it's quite limited because you don't have full access to the code base to make modification to the code. You don't really have direct access to that, but they have plugins that you could install into these your tools that make it possible for you to basically create a whole lot of things, a wide range of things. uh, you could start by creating sample projects for yourself, something that you could use in learning. Create projects around them and use them to learn. Also, it's very important that you learn design principles, because one very significant thing about working with no code and low code is that it kind of relies on your ability to design already. because it's kind of merging the whole process of engineering with designing into an easier, easy to implement step. So you need to have not just a basic idea of how HTML and CSS work, which is basic engineering. You need to also have basic knowledge of design principles. You need to understand them so that when you want to implement these things, you would implement it the right way. So you could also specifically learn how all these local no code environments implements their e-commerce platforms by getting conversant with uh, the specific plugins that are used for that, because almost everything that you might want to do or implement have plugins or companies that build plugins that are around that. So during your exploration, for instance, in the world of e-commerce, uh, there's a company that produces the tool called WooCommerce, and they are constantly updating it to suit all the possible needs that might arise around the e-commerce world. So getting conversant with this would help you know what plugins that you need in specific scenarios and how to use them. So you need to learn that and learn to use it. You need to learn how to integrate third-party tools. So say you are building an e-commerce platform and you want to also install or implement payment gateways to your platform. You need to learn how to implement platforms such payment gateways such as Paystack, Flutter. You need to learn them how to implement them in a low code or no code environment. Usually it is still via plugins, but you still need to know how these plugins interact with the actual platform's APIs, and learn how to connect them. They are usually easy to learn. Most of those platforms provide step-by-step guide on how to make that possible. You also need to understand the importance of SEO and analytics when using no-code, low-code environments. It's going to guide the way you place your information. It's going to guide the kind of words you use, and it's going to ultimately help the visibility of your site when it is searched on a search engine such as Google or Bing. Always learn how to follow up with community support. So if you choose to use WordPress, get in touch with their community and always be there so that when you have issues or you run into problems, you are easily able to ask for help. You will be easily able to get access to help when you join such communities, and you'll be able to easily get support from them. Then once you're able to learn how to use such platforms, know the right kind of plugins to use in order to achieve any kind of site that you're looking for, the next thing I believe you should be going thinking of is marketing your skills and what you can offer. And there are a lot of people out there who are also looking for people with low code no code skills that will help them manage their platforms, and you can definitely land a remote job around that. So you just need to keep staying updated, just like in the engineering aspect of things. New plugins are always coming out, new builders are always coming out, and new tools are coming out generally that would help you make the most of your low code or no code experience. So stay updated, keep searching for information, and you would make the most of this. And basically you are also a web developer, but with little or no knowledge of um, engineering. So this I hope is able to give you like a basic oversight on how to, or dive into the world of web development. Uh, Amaka, do we have like questions around this?
No, no questions.
Oh, okay. I see Mav is here with us. Mav, welcome. Good evening.
Yeah, Mav. Hello, Mav.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you. Man, I've been
Yeah.
learning.
Oh,
Thank you very much,
yeah,
Bob.
that's nice.
Okay, so
Uh,
yeah, I would love to. I would love to add to like most of the things you've said. So for those of us in the audience, I think we have actually heard a lot of things from Bob. And I'll be very honest with you. Whether it's no code, whether it's your regular HTML. If you know you're the programmer kind of guy, right? You want to write code. I mean, that's fine. If you know you are not, very good with coding, but you can go the route of, no code, right? You can build stuffs, by thinking of logical ways to arrange, these building blocks, right? For example, I'm sure most of us might have heard of WordPress, right? So if you use WordPress, it's very simple to actually put, websites together, whether it's e-commerce, LMS, just like Bob have also described. I think one thing I should do, since Bob have actually given us like all the necessary details, one thing I should do is probably just give us some bullet points, right? So for those of us that are taking notes, I think it would be a great idea to take down some of these notes, and maybe when I'm done, myself and Bob can quickly give some scenarios, based on our experience, right? We'll just give some scenarios on how we basically build some stuff in the past, right? So yeah, just to go over what Bob has said so far, I would say the first thing that I picked up, right, which of course I want you guys to, some of you that are just joining now, to also pick up real quick, is that it is very important that you learn the basics. Okay, so it's very important to learn the basics, understand the basics. Now I would not tell you to master HTML or to master CSS. As a matter of fact, most times using the word mastery can be very tricky, right, when it comes to coding, when it comes to being a developer, because the way you learn is obviously different from the way most people would learn, right? You have your own patterns, you have your own preferences, right? So if you're learning anything, whether it's a framework or a language or a tool, my advice is make sure you understand it, right? So understanding it in the sense that you can walk into a room, someone can raise the topic and say, okay, we're talking about React, or we're talking about Vue. These are frameworks, right? Or we're talking about Node.js, right? Or we're talking about WordPress, Framer, Webflow, for those of us that are interested in the no-code alternatives. When you hear these things, you should be able to say, oh, I know what this is, right? I understand how this works. I usually tell people that understanding how something works, or understanding how something should be used, sometimes is even better than actually using it. Because the truth is, I agree to the fact that you learn more by using something, but then if you understand how this thing is expected to work, when you are searching on how to use it, at least you know what to search for, right? The internet is filled with a lot of data. So if you don't know anything about a specific tool, and you decide to just jump on it and start using it immediately when you are faced with a real world challenge, that might be a problem, right? So whenever you see something, I think this is going to be my second point, right? Stay curious, right? Be curious. Have that curious mindset to say, okay, I heard someone mention this thing. What is it exactly? Let me just know. And please, when you are trying to understand these things, don't try to dive so deep. You're downloading 100 videos or playlists to understand or to master anything. At least if you know that is not the exact thing you should be doing at the moment, you can just try to maybe watch like a 2 or 3 or 4 minutes video, just to understand what that thing is used for, right? When I teach people, I usually tell them, when you come across something new, try to look for the overview video, right, where the founders or the creators of that thing, speak about it, right? Or look for an overview video to say, okay, what exactly is HTML? What is CSS? What is JavaScript? How do I use these things together? Okay, fine. I know that these are the things I should use if I'm building a website. Now let me go back and take HTML and let me dive into the details, right? Always use a roadmap. This is going to be the third item. Make sure you're writing these things down. Use a roadmap. If you want to learn front end, have a roadmap. Have a roadmap for JavaScript, have a roadmap for HTML and CSS. If you're learning backend, have a roadmap. Have a roadmap for yeah, JavaScript, Python, if that's your preference, PHP, C Sharp, right? Whatever your option is, okay, just make sure you have a roadmap. And of course, make sure you dive into doing some research. Why exactly do you want to go the route of using PHP? why exactly do you want to go the route of using C sharp, right? And don't just pick one because you think, oh, I love this thing, I love the way they do their things, I love the way the structure of the code looks, I love the way, make sure you have a plan. What exactly is your plan? Are you learning to get a job? Are you learning to, are you learning for, are you just learning for fun? Right. I mean, I've met a lot of people at some point, I used to learn some things just for the fun, right? But if you are the kind of person that says, okay, I'm coming into web development, I mean, I want to use this as a primary hustle, I want to make some money, to take care of myself and probably my family. Of course, take some time to do your research and ask questions like, what exactly is in use right now in the industry, right? What exactly can give me a job, right? That is probably stress free. Of course, you would always go through some stress. I mean, while learning, when you're learning something new, it would definitely at some point, look stressful. But the thing is, everything is stressful. Anything you don't know is stressful. But when you've learned something to some extent, at least you should be able to pick on little challenges, okay? And you will discover the stress level has obviously reduced after a while. Okay, so learn the basics, stay curious, have a roadmap. Okay, and of course, web development. I think one thing that we should really learn to do is understand responsive design, right? Whether you are using no code tools, or you are going the route of coding, most people will definitely use some of these websites on their mobile devices, right? So you should understand some, responsive, or we also call it adaptive design. So if you're designing on the web, make sure you understand how to scale that to a mobile display, to a tablet display, whether it's 7-inch or 10-inch. Make sure to learn how to scale things properly, because we have thousands of people, or millions of people, or even billions of people probably accessing your website with different devices, different screen size. So you don't want people to have a bad experience, right? So having it accessible on these devices, these diverse devices, would basically create a better experience for the users, right? For the website users. So make sure you learn responsive design, and focus on accessibility. Okay, so focus on accessibility. Make sure your website is usable by people with disabilities as well. So it actually depends on your target, right? But try as much as possible to ensure that you're building something you know uh, um, that can be used by a diverse range of individuals, right? People with disabilities should be able to at least navigate your website, whether with some gadgets with voice commands, right? So this is where you learn how to use the right tags. If you're doing HTML, for example, it's called semantic HTML. You use the right tags, and follow the accessibility guidelines. So you can easily do your research, Google search. Just do a Google search and search for web content accessibility guidelines. Okay, so you should familiarize yourself with that. We should also understand version control. So this is me just telling you what I believe. You need to understand at the basic level, so that you will be able to at least work on something, maybe with some other developers or just for yourself. When you're using version control, the idea is you should be able to track changes, collaborate with people. Now, this is especially for people writing code, right? Maybe in your third month of learning, you should be able to do some version control using Git. Then, of course, I already mentioned frameworks. Learn a framework. Make sure you understand those basics. Spend some months. After which you pick a framework. If you're doing a front end, if you're doing front end, pick a framework like React or Vue or Angular or Svelte. The thing is, you want to make sure you're picking a framework that you love, and also a framework that you can use to do some work, right, in the workplace. Okay.
Okay. Hello, Marv. Can you hear me? Hello, Marv. Can you hear me?
Oh, I've been talking. I mean, I didn't know that I mistakenly hit the mute button. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm so sorry. Oh, okay, okay. Can you hear me very well now?
yeah,
Apologies.
I can hear you. Yes.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so as I said earlier, learn a framework and of course version control. And yeah, when you're done with that, if you are since we're talking about like maybe full stack for example, you should also pick a backend framework, a programming language, of course, Python, Ruby, PHP, whatever your preference is. But remember, while making that preference, make sure you also match that with what is happening in the industry. You don't want to pick a framework that you love and at the end of the day you can't get a job or you can't build client projects because you're using something that is probably outdated, right? So make sure you have a framework that works for you and also work for customers or companies that you might want to potentially work for. And yeah, master the fundamentals or learn the fundamentals. That is preferred, right? Learn the fundamentals of those languages. Most times you will learn more on the job, right? Based on the scenarios, you will learn more based on the scenarios you get to experience. Okay, and you can have a lot of experience. You can meet people that give you even the wrong advice. I've met people with 5 to 10 years experience. Like real. So when I mean experience, I'm talking about their years in the industry. I think maybe I should change the notion. They've been in the industry for like 5 to 10 years, but in reality, the experience they've gathered within that period is just like an accumulated period of time where they spent doing this. They spent this accumulated a number of years doing the same thing, right? Just building CRUD apps or building very basic apps. They don't learn the advanced tools because they become so comfortable, right? Don't be that kind of person. Always try out the new things. Maybe not on your project, but at least try to explore and understand what is trending or what is happening. So that you don't have the newbies become way better than you within a short period of time, and before you know it, you become a stale developer. Who have refused to adapt. Okay, so always stay curious and understand some sort of security measures, right? How do you protect your apps? How do you don't want to be a developer that end up building applications that hackers can simply get into and tear down, right? And you end up leaving user information exposed on the internet. Okay, so make sure you understand some fundamentals when it comes to security, um, and their vulnerabilities, right? Make sure you understand some of these things and understand how to protect your websites, right? Also understand that performance is important, right? Performance is really important. A lot of people don't pay attention to performance, which is why when most of you visit some websites, you see the way websites are very very slow, right? Sometimes you ask yourself, okay, maybe you tell yourself this is how it's meant to be. Meanwhile, some other developers can pick that up and make it way better, 10 times better, 100 times better. So please, performance is important. Optimize your code, optimize your images, compress your images, make sure you have like well optimized assets so that you can have faster page load. Understand the best way to render items, whether it's an image or video. I once made a mistake. I had a website that was loading a 10 megabyte video, right? On the website. So a 10 megabyte video was loading from the website, from the project file. And the problem I had with that was I deployed it on a free hosting, right, on Vercel. And I can tell you, when there was a period I visited that the hosting environment, and I discovered that my website has accumulated gigabytes of bandwidth consumption, right? And I was telling myself, what exactly is taking this massive size? And I realized that whenever someone refreshed the homepage, you practically lose 10 megabytes. You can imagine, the user or the person visiting the page is losing 10 megabytes. And at the same time, I am accumulating 10 megabytes on my end, the platform owner. So, it's not something you probably think about, but when you really take your time to think about the user, because you have to think about the user, you discover that you are making the users lose 10 megabytes on every refresh on your homepage, which means they probably committed a crime visiting your homepage. Like you really want to drain this guy. So, you have to fix things like that. Instead, you can decide to maybe, connect that website, that video from YouTube, from Vimeo, from some other platforms, that where they can be cached and it's going to render when the user wants to actually watch that thing, right? Rather than having them load it up, when your website load every time. So think about some of these things, all right? you need to also have that skill when it comes to debugging. So debugging means you're trying to fix something. You built a website, there are problems, customers reach out to you, clients reach out to you, and you're able to jump into that a project you did like 2 years ago or like about a year ago, and fix it. Okay, so don't just hack things around to make it work. Don't be the developer that just want to make things work and run away with your money. Okay, make sure you are being paid, right? But at the same time, make sure you're doing a good job. Okay, for your own good, or maybe for the good of some other developers that would work on that, after some time. All right. Um, yeah. So make sure you have good debugging skills. Bobby mentioned collaboration and communication, very important, right? As a matter of fact, I was so happy when he mentioned that, because most people don't really talk about these things. You can have all these other skills I have mentioned. If you are a terrible communicator, trust me, you're going to have a bad time, right? You're going to have a difficult one when it comes to getting new clients, or probably working in a company or working with a team of other developers. You're going to be seen as a terrible person most times, because you probably don't know how to put or use the right word when communicating your ideas, right? So soft skills, very necessary. Communication, collaboration, we call this teamwork. A lot of people have on their CV, I am a good team player. But in reality, trust me, they're terrible team players. Okay. So if you say you're a good team player, be a good team player in the workplace. All right. So in reality, be a good team player, not just on your TV. Okay. And always keep learning, right? Always keep learning. Bobby said you should build projects. So spend enough time practicing, build something realistic, right? Spend time building projects, create your portfolio, front end, build a simple web page, host it on GitHub, on Vercel, Netlify, Cloudflare pages. There's so many ways you can actually host your websites for free. Yeah, and network with people. Bobby also mentioned this. It is very important. Network with people. Make sure you have those soft skills. Build your projects. Network with people, and of course, understand some things about hosting. Understand some things about how do I have built this? How do I move this from this position to this position? So that people can access it. Whether it's a website, the front end, the back end, whether it's some kind of assets, video assets, image assets. Learn to host using learn to use some of these platforms. They're not even difficult to use. It's just a matter of time. Maybe a few hours, you can actually learn how to use Cloudinary, for example, to host your videos and the images. Right? It's all about what you know, right? The tools you have heard of. What exactly do you? There are so many things that can solve your problem. The thing is, you don't know. You don't know these things. So, are you good with googling? Are you good with researching? You Google most times, no doubt, right? Stack Overflow, GitHub. You definitely look for problems in so many places. You definitely look for solution, right? In so many places, solutions to your problems in so many places. So spend enough time learning how to actually search for these things. SEO, I mentioned SEO, very important. Understand how to optimize your websites, your applications to improve, visibility. Optimize with your meta tags. Make sure the contents are optimized. Make sure the structure. Make sure you optimize the site structure, right? So that when it gets online, it can be visible. There are tools you can use for this. If you're using WordPress, there are plugins you can use. Whether you're using WordPress or you're using code or you're coding manually, there are plugins you can use, and just make sure you have a proper HTML content structures. If you're doing that manually, and of course, I mentioned user experience, very important. Time management, one of those soft skills. Of course, it's something you should learn to prioritize tasks and manage your time effectively, and ensure you set goals that are realistic, right? Set goals that are realistic, that are achievable. Set reasonable milestones basically for your project. And of course, I think I would probably stop here. I would just say try as much as possible to be optimistic. Stay passionate about what you do. Um, Practice, learn, build your projects. Stay passionate, and probably you can start. After some time, don't rush, don't put pressure on yourself. Okay, after some time, you can start applying for some gigs out there, and I'm sure you will definitely find something, something really interesting out there. Okay, So this is me just rushing through most of these things. I think I mentioned about 20 or more bullet points. If you need some of those bullet points, you can actually request from the team at Better Copper. Reach out, join the Discord server. You'll definitely find some of these things. I will share that. I will share them with Amaka and Anita, and I'm sure they would share these points with you on the Discord server. So yeah, that's all I have for now. Thank you very much, Amaka.
All right. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, Bobby. I think Bobby dropped off. This has been a very enlightening session. I've learned a lot. And okay, I think there's this question here. I don't know if you saw it. How long does it take to become a full stack developer?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, how long does it take to become a full stack developer? Well, I think I would actually say it depends. So, if you're a complete newbie, you have no experience with front end or back end whatsoever, then of course it will take you a longer time. So it depends on your pace, right? The pace at which you are able to grab, new things, new ideas, new topics, and yeah, basically it depends on your learning pace. If I should give um, an estimation, based on my experience teaching, a lot of people, I would say anything between, let's say, you know, um, 6 to 6 months upwards, right? I've seen people that are able to pick front end and back end, especially using JavaScript, which is of course is what you use on the front end and the back end, right? So they learn JavaScript, Node, maybe React, and HTML, CSS, and of course the basic JavaScript as well. So they learn these things within the period of like 6 7 months. But let's work with 10 months, for example. At Top Universe, there's a program for 10 months, right, for a full stack development. So let's say 10 months is fine. But if it's someone that is already familiar with front end, say you're already familiar with front end, and now you want to become full stack, or obviously that would that would basically take you a lesser amount of time, because you already know how to navigate, or how to basically look for solutions. So let's say roughly an extra 3 to 4 months, for someone that is already familiar with one end, whether it's front end or back end. A complete newbie, let's say 6 months if you're extremely smart and fast, right? If you like to take your time, give yourself 10 months, and I'm sure you will do pretty good. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ma, for that. So thank you guys. I believe you learned a lot. I have there's the Better Copper Discord link, it's on the chat, so you can go ahead and do well to join the Discord channel, so that way you have easy access to more information. So thank you, Mav. Thank you, Bobby. Do have a lovely day, everyone. See you later.
All right, bye.